Good afternoon. I'm Drew Hopkins. I'm your host today for Listen Up, our video podcast in the very vacant headquarters of Land Information Services. With me today, I have someone very special, someone that I think that you're going to learn a lot from and that you're really going to enjoy hearing from today. On our podcast, what we want to do is we want to bring in leaders from the oil and gas industry, influencers, people that are making a difference, people that are promoting positive change. I don't think that there's too many labels that I could add to that would better personify the man sitting to my left, and that's Mr. Tom Massey. Tom Massey, I would need another 15 to 20 minutes added on to this podcast to be able to tell all of his accolades. He's written, I believe, 11 books. Is that
Yes.
correct? 11 books. He is a trainer, a life coach, I would even go so far as saying a world explorer, a leader of meditation. There's so many different things that we could talk about, and so many that I've seen firsthand, helping companies, helping teams, and helping individuals get the most out of their experience and build on their personal gain in their job and just in their life. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that this is something that's meaningful for all of you that are watching today. So we're going to hit a few different topics. We want you to leave any comments below, and we'll make sure to respond to those accordingly. But just kicking right off, I want to give you a good outline of let Tom tell you who Tom is. So Tom, if you would kind of give us a rundown of how you got into this business and how you got to the place that you're at now.
That's a good question, Drew. That's a real good question about this business and this business of helping people and where my passion really started with that. I've known since I was a young child that I wanted to teach. I used to stand in a mirror and I used to use my mother's hairbrush when I was a kid in her bedroom in front of the dresser mirror with the hairbrush and talk into the hairbrush and look into the mirror, and I taught. I would walk back and forth and I would teach and I would watch myself and so I always knew that I wanted to be in front of people. I wanted to work with people. I wanted to teach people. When I was a young boy, I used to teach during summer vacation in school. I used to teach the younger kids. I would set up a desk out in the yard and I would teach classes with the younger students. So I love teaching. So that's where my first passion for working with teaching and training started. I was also a voracious reader. I loved to read when I was younger, and I loved to read stories about people who were heroes, people who rose up. The Rocky story, so to speak. The people who were underdogs that prevailed and did things right. It's the hero's journey. They were undertaking a journey to make a difference, and all the trials and tribulations they went through as well were interesting to watch. And so as I grew up, I started studying people like Nelson Mandela, and I just finished Mandela's book, A Long Road to Freedom. And it's interesting, and I talk about Mandela in this new book too, about his experiences that and forgiving the people that incarcerated him as well. And so people like that, real heroes. I talk about Rosa Parks, who got on a bus one day. She didn't get on that bus to get arrested. She got on the bus to go home. And they wanted her to move back because the rule or the law was people couldn't sit in white only section. And she said, I know the rule, but I'm not doing it anymore. I'm tired of that. And so she was willing to stand up for what she believed. And consequently, she didn't get on that bus to start a movement one day. But consequently, she teamed up with a young fiery preacher by the name of Martin Luther King afterwards, and they were a catalyst for the civil rights movement. So those are the types of stories over and over and over that have inspired me and influenced me. And I've always been a storyteller. I love to tell the stories because I believe, as you know, we're hardwired for stories. The human race is hardwired for stories, and stories are what motivate us. Some people call them parables. There's been some great teachers. Jesus' greatest teaching points was telling parables, stories to people, and all the other teachers and spiritual guides have been great storytellers. So that's what inspired me early on. And then another thing that inspired me is performance. I'm always interested in what helps people perform at higher levels. I've enjoyed sports. I was a coach in sports. I was an athlete. I was a coach. And then there was a natural transition into the business world with leaders, because there's not any difference between world-class athletes and world-class leaders. It requires the same self-discipline, self-mastery, the same relentless pursuit of excellence there as well. So that's important to me. That's what I write about. That's what I read about. And every day when I get up, I think, how can I be better at how can I become better today than I was yesterday?
And so, and not jumping ahead too far, but so the book that Tom and his wife Christine just finished writing has many of these kind of stories and these different almost parables within them. And you get a page of a parable, you get an action plan on the next page, and then you get how you're going to put that into a kind of defining moment of your life. What you just said, like all of those different examples, I was thinking just the entire time of the way that those lined up in the book, and the different way that I could totally see the examples that you would put forward that really show how those people like Rosa Parks or the Martin Luther King, how the plan of action, the wheels started turning, and they were able to make that difference. They were able to be that momentum, that catalyst of change that was so just impactful, and that we all have that ability to be able to make an impact. And then the other thing that you said of getting up every day and finding ways that you can continue to add to that. And you can continue, like as long as I've known you, you've always talked about, I say, well, what's next for Tom Massey? And you say, well, I've got an idea for another book, or I've got something else that I think these teachings for young men, I've got this idea. And I think in the book, one of the things that I really like was, I will butcher the name, so I'm not even going to try, but a cellist or a violinist who became one of the greatest of all time. And practiced 6 to 8 hours a day, and every day of his life. And he would turn 40, and he was the best. And he'd practice, and they'd say, "You're fantastic. You don't need to practice anymore." And I think he'd say something like, "I practice because I'm seeing improvement. I'm seeing some sort of improvement." And then at 70, he was still practicing all those times. At 80, at 90, and he'd say, "I continuously am seeing improvement."
Right.
And I think about that with everything that we go through, and I mean, to your credit of waking up and finding there's something else I can write about, there's another way that I can reach people, and there's some way that I'm going to be able to make this click for that person out there that's going to pick this up. And I am in love with that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So when I met Tom, it was in our past oil and gas life, and Tom was a trainer, and he was really kind of doing all the different things at the company of being able to try to build up that culture, build up that, empower people. And one of the friends that I had said, "You need to take Tom Massey's mindfulness and meditation class." And I had heard about classes like this, but I thought, I don't need that. That's not something that I need. This is just people getting involved just so they can get out of a little bit of work each day. After the first one, I was hooked. And that was because I saw what he was doing, and I saw the ability of him really being able to calm a frenzied mind down, to be able to talk them through the ability to find ways to get in touch with themselves. And by the time you left, you were just on a different level of just feeling so much, not like a meditation, like relaxed or anything, but you felt more in line with yourself. And I think so many people today don't take time for themselves to recognize that's as important as, we drink water, we eat food to live. But one of the things, and you have gone back to it time and time again, of the power of our brain and the ability of, if we take care of our brain, if we continue to train our brain, if we continue to do things to stimulate ourselves, we can unlock so much more potential in ourselves, in our teams at work, and live stronger, fuller lives. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit more about the studies that you've done on the brain, mm-hmm. and how you've seen different ways that people can unlock and can get more out of their life. Yeah.
Well, and the story you told was about Pablo Casals, the great cellist, and he proved that you can continue to learn and continue to grow even into advanced ages. Into his 90s, he was still learning new things on the cello there as well. There's this field of science in neuroscience called, there's a phenomenon called neuroplasticity, and that's where the brain actually has the ability to continue to wire itself and rewire itself. And there's a saying that neurons that fire together wire together. And so when we start learning new things, and we never get too old to do that the brain literally starts to wire itself together in different ways, the circuitry of the brain. So that's one thing with learning, continually learning. When we don't stop, the brain continues to form and reform itself as well. For mindfulness, for a number of years, people thought that mindfulness was this Eastern philosophy, kind of out there stuff, and a lot of people thought it was some sort of a religion, but it's not. It's just a way of life, for one. But now we know through the studies and through the science that when people engage in mindfulness and just paying attention to the moment, to the present moment, something happens in the brain, the prefrontal cortex of the brain. It starts to, through brain scans, we see that people's brains start to just light up. They start to light up, so they actually have access to utilizing more points in the brain itself. And so people and it doesn't take a lot, 5 minutes a day. If you spend 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, just sitting, focusing on the present itself, then the brain starts to pay back, richly reward you in its ability to perform as well. We also have an opportunity to connect. At that point, there's a heart-brain coherence that takes place. Did you know there's as many neurons, as many brain cells basically in the heart as there is the brain? The heart speaks to the brain a lot more than the brain speaks to the heart. And so when we engage in this mindfulness training, we start to line up. There's actually a coherence that takes place between the brain and the heart. And so we function better, we're happier, we deal with stress better, we are just much more capable of being all that we can be as a human being. And we start to listen to the heart. Pascal once said that the heart has reasons that reason knows not of. And so the heart has reasons. If we were to listen, and we hear people, since we were children, we heard people say, well, listen to your heart. Just listen to your heart will know what to do. The heart knows often what to do a lot more than the brain, and we get cluttered. And so the heart's more in touch with our feelings, the brain's more in touch with our thoughts there. But what you have to do is you have to marry the thoughts and the feelings together in order to be able to create the highest functioning life that we have the ability to do. And so mindfulness, and we're seeing it more and more go mainstream. There are more and more companies that actually engage and endorse and have classes for mindfulness. I know executive coaches now, that's what they do. They just help executives practice mindfulness, paying attention to the moment, because we have way too much of a tendency to think about yesterday and worry about tomorrow.
So what do you think, whenever you're talking about like an executive group getting together, the executive panel, even here at our company, we are 90 to nothing. We are stretched in every direction, and that is not rare. That's obvious in so many companies and so many bigger than ours.
Sure.
They are stretched in so many different directions. They have 400 things on their mind. They have 300 emails that they have to respond to. They have the weight of finances, everything else, plus environmental different problems that or pandemic problems that go on. When you talk about mindfulness in today's day and age, what are some of the things that you would recommend to those teams, or whenever you're going in and you're sitting down across from, say, 5 different executives that have 4,000 things on their mind, how do you pitch to them that mindfulness is something that's going to help them?
Well, one of the best ways to do to convince people is to show them. And so it's not a deal where you have to have people doing some sort of weird meditative type of activity.
Right. Which I
the
think
best-
people think
Yeah.
that's what it's going to be, right?
The best place to do is just start thinking about breathing. It's just simply slowing down the breath. The Navy SEALs do this. The Navy SEALs actually practice their breathing to equip them to function under highly anxious situations in combat. So Navy SEALs, martial artists, are all trained in the art of breathing, slow breathing. So that's where meditation or mindfulness starts. So with a group of executives, one of the things I would do is just help them to just sit down. First of all, just slow down. Just start to focus on the breath. Take a deep breath in. Let your breath out slow. So when you start doing that repetitively 5-10 times, they're just deep breath in, slow breath out. Once people do that, they can start to monitor themselves. They can start to think about what's going on inside. So the people who are highly stressed, see, our breath and our emotions always mimic one another. If we're highly stressed, if we're anxious, our breath will mimic our emotions. It will be short, choppy, almost gaspy there as well. Rapid breathing that takes place. We can't change our emotions at will.
Right.
But we can change our breathing just with our decision to do that. And as we start to change our breath, then the emotions start to mimic that breath. And so when we slow down the breath, then what happens internally? We begin to slow down. We begin to just pull down here. And so there's not as much stress. Now we can begin to think about things. Then we can start to open the door to creativity. We all need to be able to be more creative there, especially for problem solving. Sure. There, just to sit down for a moment. Let's sit down and think about this. Let's become more creative with that. It's hard to do when we're anxious. So mindfulness helps you, it buys you that time mentally to sit down and start to really, really focus on what's going on right now in the present there, because that's where we'll solve our problems, are in the present moment. It's there. Instead of worrying about what's going on in the future or regretting what we did with the past as well. So as executives, as busy people start to look at that, as they start to slow that down and they start to develop a habit of doing that, then they can start to see some results in their life. It won't happen overnight because the brain is very undisciplined. We have, it's called, in the Eastern tradition, it's called monkey mind. We're all a bunch of monkeys. We have all these monkeys playing around there. But what we can do is we focus on the breath. We train the brain, just like an athlete trains their body to perform. We start to train the brain to start to slow down and be very precise about what we do. And like I said, the studies show that when we do that, it actually lights up the brain. The brain actually becomes more capable of thinking as well. But there's got to be a starting place. People need to be able to start that and watch it have an effect on their lives and their businesses there as well. But it won't happen overnight. No habit happens overnight.
Correct.
We do it repetitively, and then what happens? It starts to get easier and easier and easier.
What is it? Don't they say like a habit? If you can do something like 7 to 10 days in a row, if you can change it, it's something around there. And maybe you've heard different, but I always thought around 7 to 10 days, if you can get yourself into, or maybe it's 2 weeks of doing something like again, in one of your books and in things that I've read in the past, it says like, set your alarm 30 minutes earlier. Set your alarm 30 minutes earlier, and you're missing out on 30 minutes of sleep, but you're gaining the ability to possibly read something, possibly spend that time in quiet, reflective, just kind of with yourself, alone with your thoughts, and be able to put the day in order. And then after that 2 weeks, that getting up 30 minutes early doesn't bother that person at all anymore. And they look forward to that time, and they find that they're not tired, they're more focused, they're ready to take the day on head on. And I think it's those little things of, I know, like mid-30s for me, I started kind of falling into that pit of thinking, well, I'm doing well, I'm doing well with my job, and I'm doing well, so obviously I know more than what somebody else knows. And I obviously am making good right decisions. So if somebody came to me with a different training perspective, or they said, hey, read this sort of book, I'd say, oh, I'll get to it. In the back of my mind, it was a very high ego thought of, I thought, I'm obviously making the right decisions here. I don't need to devote any extra time because what I'm doing is working. As the years went on, what I started seeing is that was a just very kind of pompous way of thinking, and what I gained from being able to put that all in front of me and say, okay, I can, like, kind of like what we said at the beginning of it, why would I be so why would I not take the opportunity to learn these different things, to put myself out there, to maybe be uncomfortable for 5 minutes to see the gains that could make. And it really was a huge benefit to me whenever I started opening myself to that. And to then after that, I wanted to be like a sponge, and I wanted to pull everything that I possibly could in. And now, as I'm getting further along in my business career, I'm wanting to make not just a stronger impact on, I think you go in different stages, and for me, I think there's a portion of time where you want to do it for yourself, and you're wanting that own personal gain, but then you actually make a transition of where you're wanting to make a gain for all those around you. And that was one of the biggest things that I think you and I had talked about that even at one point of, I know at the very end, even at this Habits for Successful Living, and correct me if I'm wrong because I might butcher your wonderful line in it, but it said, don't just try to be the best in the world, you being the best in the world, try to be the best for the world.
That's right.
And that was such a big line of, I think that we often miss some of those things like that. And whenever we start focusing on the others, and we start focusing on what our ability to be able to give to others and help raise others up, how that can affect the business can be monumental. And that kind of leads into one of the things that I wanted to talk about and kind of the influencers in a business. And one of the things that Tom told me years ago, and one of the things that he was very passionate about, was saying to be able to have an influencer mindset, and to only even be able to have just a few of these people in an organization can transform that entire organization for the better, and expand on kind of the influencers.
Okay. And that mindset, really, a lot of it comes from the diffusion of innovation that Simon Sinek talks about it. He got his information from a guy named Rogers that actually wrote a book called Diffusion of Innovation. So the point is anytime you have an innovative idea out there to carry, if you want to start a movement, so to speak, go find these early adopters. Roughly about 8-10% of an organization. Those are the people that stand in line to buy a new iPhone, when they can walk into the store next week and get one.
Right.
They don't have to stand in line, but they want to be on the leading edge of that. And so that's what you do. You start to find those people, those early adopters, those people that are looking around for change. They want to be a part of, they want to be the difference makers. Those are the people that, and that's why Apple's been so successful, because they have wanted to be on the leading edge of technology there. And so people affiliate with Apple not because of their products, but because of the idea there as well. So you find, and within an organization, if you want to start a movement within an organization, you find your 8%, you find your small group of early adopters there, and sell them on the idea. They'll sell everybody else. Everybody else is watching them. They're watching them because those are the cool guys. They're the guys that are leading the way, the pace setters. And so we get those people to buy into the idea. And also with diffusion of innovation, is people who are like-minded affect each other, like engineers affect engineers. If you want to get a doctor to do something, find a doctor to talk him into it. If you want to find an oil and gas guy to do it, find another oil and gas guy. We find people of like mind there to talk to as well. But anytime you want to start a movement, anytime you want to do, invoke a change to a culture within an organization, you don't have to change everybody. And the law of critical mass is relatively small. The critical mass point there as well. You just get your early adopters. You get those people that want to lead the change, and get them, build those alliances. They will make the change. And so in that way, leadership is not all it's cracked up to be. What it is those first few followers. So you find those first few followers, you embrace them, you start to do the dance with them. And then all of a sudden they start to bring people in. Next thing you know, you have a full-fledged movement within an organization, and you just started out as some lone nut out there dancing, but you found a couple of guys, a couple of people to join in with you. And as well.
And that's a fantastic YouTube. With the different books that Tom has put through, we want to talk about a couple of them, but one of the things from Habits of Successful Living, there is so much, and I know I said it before we've got it's a single day read. It's a couple hour read would be what it would be, and it's very influential, and you leave it just with such a empowered feeling. But you've got a little story, you've got an action plan, and you've got a daily commitment afterwards. And one of the things where I was thinking about the innovators and the people that were willing to take risk, the line that you have in the book it said, the Wright brothers, neither one of them had a pilot's license.
That's right.
Whenever they went out to Kitty Hawk.
That's right.
And I really do, I appreciate that we're fortunate here. We have so many different people that come up with ideas and the what if scenarios and saying, well, what if we did this? well, what if we did this? And in kind of innovation and technology, where we're going, we're learning all day, every day, and we're learning from every generation, from the generation just coming out of college, from the people that have been in business for 10 plus years, and for the people that are the 30 plus year veterans. We are still getting those what if scenarios, and I think that's one of those driving factors of saying we're businesses that look for change, that look for ways that they can change for the better. You really can make the sky the limit, just because you can continue that creative thought process.
Right.
And if you create that, it keeps everybody involved and everybody pretty excited with it. So that's one of the things that I absolutely love with that. Before we talk about the books, the thing that we always talk about, and we will continue to talk about this until this isn't something that we talk about anymore, is the life event that we all have been through over these last few months. And this pandemic that we've gone through, and obviously if you look at me, I look like I've picked up the COVID-19 instead of the freshman 15. I have the facial hair of a Santa Claus going through some sort of a midlife crisis, and it's all, I always jokingly blame that on 2020. For you, and every time that we've spoke together, I always leave the conversation, I always feel better and more motivated and more ready to kind of grab the bull by the horns. How has this been for you? Has this been, you always are such a positive person, and you're always such a person that finds ways to find wins and find value in any situation, and being able to get out and talk to people. This has affected all of us. If we're doing Zoom meetings now, and we're seeing numbers rising of people that are saying that they're dealing with depression, or they're dealing with high anxiety. It is a different landscape for all of us to be going through. Right now, like our office, we have 10% of our staff. Everyone else is working at home. Working at home provides its own set of challenges. Where you were, coming back home and excited to see your family. Now your family is there the whole time, and you may be equally excited. But this is a different business world.
Right.
So, what have you seen of ways that you feel continue to build that inspiration, or continue to find ways in this new environment that we're in? What have you seen have been challenges and ways that we can find wins through that?
Yeah, you're right. It has been challenging for a lot of people. It's been challenging for us. COVID in and of itself has been a tough thing. And then on top of all that, a couple of weeks ago, we lost power for 8 days.
That's
and
right.
so my wife and I were talking about it. I told her, I said, this is an opportunity for us to practice what we preach. This is an opportunity for us to practice principles of resilience that we know to be true, to test these out. Because these are times we need to be resilient.
Right.
These are times, during the difficult times. But did you know that more, and even during tough economical times, more millionaires rose up out of the Great Depression than any other time period. When we, and the human race again, is incredibly resilient. We find ways to take opportunities, take advantage of situations. In fact, in the Chinese language, the word crisis has two symbols that represent it. One symbol means danger and the other means opportunity. And so we can look at any situation, and what we're looking for we find, because the brain is incredible that way. It will find what we're looking for. If we're looking for danger, if we're looking all the ways to get down, our brain will say there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one.
Right.
But if I start to look for the opportunities, okay, where's my opportunity? The brain says, here's one, there's one. So we look for opportunities. So that's the first thing. In these situations, am I looking for the opportunity to grow in this in some way and become stronger through this? So look for the opportunity in the crisis. The next thing, I use a formula called E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome.
I remember hearing you say that before.
Yeah. And so we can't control the events. A lot of the events in our lives we cannot control. We couldn't control COVID. We couldn't control a lot of things. We couldn't control the power outage. But what we can do is we have full control over our response. And so when we control our response, then we influence the outcome there. And so that's another thing. I focus on what I can control in life. If I can't control that, I need to let it go, because it's like complaining about gravity. You know,
Can't do anything
I can't do anything about gravity.
Right.
I can complain about it all I want. I can curse gravity, but it's not going to do any good.
Right.
There. And so what are some of the things we can control? One, we can control our thoughts. We can control, what am I thinking? You know, we're thinking machines. We think up to 60,000 thoughts a day. Now, the problem is 90% of those were the same thoughts we had yesterday.
And the other 80 were negative.
Are negative. That's right. Exactly. And so I have the ability, and if I can't control my thought, at least I can observe it. You know, I can look at my thought and think, whoa, and that's where mindfulness comes in again, because as I start to practice mindfulness, I become quite an observer of my thoughts. And as I start to observe my thoughts, then I can say, I'll change that one. I'll change that one. I'll change that one. So I start to think about what I'm thinking about. I start to control my thinking. Then the second thing is to control what you say. Because, you know, the thoughts, the only thing more powerful than a thought are the thoughts that have been put into words. Yep. You know, a negative thought is 4 to 7 times more powerful than a positive thought. There's a multiplier of 10 when I speak it. And so a negative thought, when I start to speak it out here into the air, it's 40 to 70 times greater. The effect is there.
You know, that always went back on, we would talk about like owner relations for oil and gas companies. And we would, one of the presentations that I used to give talked about so the owner relations agents are taking all of the calls, you know, for these oil and gas companies. Mm-hmm. And you think this could be transitioned out to like AT&T cell phone coverage. Mm-hmm. If my cell phone goes down, what do? Like I find a landline, or I get online and I call their customer service. Mm-hmm. The customer service hears is no one's calling in immediately to tell them they're doing a good job. They are going to give the best service that they possibly can. And if they happen to not give good service, if I call in to my cable company and I don't get good service, I think the thing that we used to tell, and I'd have to go back and look at the numbers on it, but I think it was generally, if you get bad service, you will tell between 3 and 6 different people. You'll tell them about the bad experience with the cable company that I had. It was awful. They were so rude. Now, if that person goes above and beyond and gives me good service, how many people do I tell? Maybe one. Mm-hmm. Maybe one. That negativity and that bad news spreads so much quicker and spreads so much, like it just ingrains itself. And so it has always been our mindset to say, how do we get that positive, that one reputation, like transition of where someone is telling about the good job, or telling about the good deed, or telling at least some positive. And that's been a hard thing for me too, in this last 8 months to a year, it really has been where we're talking about those, you know, so many of the thoughts are coming from yesterday, and then they're overwhelming, or they're so negative. I would sometimes I would say to like my wife, I'd say something that I just regurgitate negative, because that's the only thing that I was letting just kind of envelop my mind. Yeah. And it was what was just kind of all controlling. And until you really get a handle on that, and until you really come to grips with saying, okay, I need to start just really kind of listening to myself, figuring out how to make that transition over. And the beautiful thing is we are in control over that.
Absolutely.
And we don't have to sit back and constantly just grumble about situations or be upset, and we can get through those with the thought process of knowing that yes, these are tough times, but we are going to make it through. Just like what you said, fighting with gravity. There's nothing that we can control, but the things that we can control are our thoughts and actions. And it definitely is a beautiful thing. So in your book, one of the things, so there were a couple things. Speaking about happiness, Tom writes, happiness isn't just a mood, it's a work ethic. And I always thought that too, of saying when I come into work, or whenever I am on the job, which I want to be on the job at all hours, I want to make sure that I portray that in a positive light. I want that to be putting my best foot forward and being able to produce positivity for myself and those around me. That also goes into, I think you had a thing of the fulcrum of talking about give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. And that I liked so much, because that went into if you have negativity on one side of like a teeter-totter, what are you having to balance it out on the other, and where are you having to put that on that fulcrum? But you can move it to a certain point of where you can negate the weight of all of those bad things. And I thought that was such a powerful just analogy in that book, and I really liked seeing that. I think there's a lot in there that I think people will really get some wonderful and meaningful just life lessons from. What we kind of want to end on is more about the books and what you have put together. We talked about 11 books that Tom has done in his career, and I'm sure more coming. You probably have ideas of more that will be happening. These are all just to give this up front. You can find Tom Massey's books on Amazon.com for Kindle and in paperback too. It's very they're very incredible reads. The ones that I have read are The Shovel, The Gift of the Shovel, Habits for Successful Living, and I'm going to go through the other ones as well. But I would strongly encourage you to consider looking at these, and I guarantee after just a quick read and skim through that you will automatically see how that this can be a benefit to not just you but your team. Tell me about the process and kind of the drive of you continuing to put out these different books, find different topics that you haven't hit before, and just really continuing on this path of giving back.
Okay. First of all, I write books I need to read. I'm writing to myself, and our audience just has an opportunity to be a part of that, to witness that.
I like that.
But I write the books that I need to read, and I read these books every day. And you can read these books, these habits books, pretty quickly. But I read a chapter every morning, a chapter of each one of those habits books. Also, I write about habits because I think it's important. We talked about, you asked a question about how long does it take to instill a habit. It kind of depends on the person. Some of us are quickly, we can get the habit of eating banana splits in about 3 days,
right.
or whatever,
right.
But exercising and doing things that are tough, it may take up to 180 days to really have a deeply entrenched habit. Average is about 66 days, although some people say 27 days, 21 days. So again, it depends on what it is and how much social support you have,
right,
and the incentive there as well. But most of the books that I write about are about habits, because I know that if we can instill habits in our lives, habits change our life. And so I like to write books that transform the life. Transform is an underlying theme with my books, to help people transform their lives through renewing their thinking there and their habits as well. So we have multiple books. I'm writing a book right now for on habits for regenerative living for senior citizens. Every day in America, 10,000 people turn 65. That's an incredible group of people, market of people. The fastest growing segment of our population are centenarians. In another 20 years, there'll be close to 5 million 100-year-olds. So we're living longer lives. 70 all of a sudden is becoming the new 40 because people are they're getting it. They're understanding that they can live high quality lives into their hundreds there. Our bodies are made to do that. We don't age, we wear out because of our lifestyle there as well. So we're writing that. That'll be out before Christmas. We'll have that finished. Then I have a book that I've written on hope. The Ark of Hope. The science of hope. How to develop hope in your life. It's not a wishful thing. It's something that we actually harness through setting goals, and then we set habits and we go after it. How do you transform your life? The Ark of Transformation is another one that's important. I want to go back. I've written several books on leadership. I'm not through. We need better leaders in this world.
For sure.
I have another book coming out that's I just finished a webinar on it. How to become the leader that others want to follow as well. Because if they don't follow you, you're not going to lead them. You're just taking a walk.
That's exactly
what
right.
you're doing. And so that's another book that'll be coming out in the beginning of the new year's. How to lead, how to build a team, of people that comes together. And
Are those taking into effect the teams of the post-COVID era?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to, because we have a new norm. We have a new way of doing business. Like we were talking about earlier, a lot of companies now are doing business from a virtual basis. So how do you build a team that a good amount of time they spend is in a virtual environment? How do we come together and we form that camaraderie, we form that commitment to one another from a distance there? We can do that. There's a way to do it. We can explore that as well. So building high performance teams is something that we'll be doing in the future too, to help people
I think
do that.
I think the ones that you mentioned, hope, leadership, expanding the catalog that you already currently have, I think those are incredibly important right now more than ever. I'm very, very excited to see the one for the kind of the senior age living. I think that's a market that not too many people have hit, on that really is interesting, because we are seeing lifespans getting longer and people wanting to live rich, full lives and find out, how can I continue to make a difference and
That's right.
Give back. So that's wonderful.
And we have the ability, and this is not just for seniors, because it will help everybody, because everybody's going to be there.
That's right.
Everybody's going to be there, so they better get a jump on it too. But we know now through modern technology, and I don't like using the word hack, but I'm going to go ahead and use body hack, hack into our cellular structure. We have the ability to turn back the biological clock. We have the ability to actually get younger there if we do the right things. And we do it through our diet, we do it through exercise, we do it through getting adequate amounts of sleep, is important. We do it through mindfulness, because mindfulness helps us to decrease or alleviate stress and the effects of stress on our body. So at the cellular level, we start to equip the body to have everything it needs to stay young, stay functioning. There's no reason why we can't live into advanced ages, into 100 years old, and continue to work, continue to run marathons, and continue to thrive and have a high quality of life.
The only thing that I could say to that was I'm 39 and my knees crack like glow sticks. So if you put a chapter in there about that, I would really appreciate it.
There'll be a chapter in there for you.
So that's fantastic. Well, Tom, before we wrap this up, I want to kind of give you the floor of if there's anything you want to kind of tell the people about of where they can find you. What we'll also do to everyone watching out, we will put the link to Tom's website within this video. But we definitely want you to be able to get in touch with Tom, and if you get in touch with us, we will definitely make the introduction too as well. But Tom, I'll give you the last word here.
Okay, thanks, Drew. If you want to get in touch with us, you can always go to masseyconsultingteam.com, and we actually, Christine and I do a weekly blog. We actually do a weekly Q&A there and a weekly newsletter that we post information that's helpful. So you won't get spammed. We don't give your names to we don't sell the list or anything like that, but it gives us an opportunity to provide you with great life transforming tips each week. So feel free to get on to our website and sign up for our blogs or our Q&As or newsletters. And if there's anything that we can do to help you, be sure and let us know. You can contact us through that.
That sounds great. So as we wrap this up, thank you again for watching Listen Up. If it wasn't evident within this conversation, I highly respect Tom Massey and everything that he does to try to empower people in all walks of life. I think it's one of the most noble causes and definitely an inspiration to me. So go out there, make positive change, and let's find ways that we can build others up. So not just be the best for you or your company, let's be the best for the world.